Holy shit, it's a direct hit. Yeah, holy can be shit when you mess with it, twist it, make it fundamental, rubble, twisted metal, the dust never settles. Holy shit, it's holy war, eye for an eye, even the score. Your God, my God, knee deep in gore. We're always standing on opposite shores. Instead of opening each other's doors, we could be consciousness growers. But instead, in our quest for blood, we sink into the mud until we're led by the leaders of the easily led, handing out scriptures on molten lead, written in blood to get inside your head, until you loyally do your bit and sell your soul for holy shit.
This is the morning news. A very good morning to you. A look now at the main stories so far today. And the diplomatic row over Iraq has left the UN Security Council more deeply split than at any time since the Cold War. It follows the latest report from Chief Weapons Inspector Hans Blix, who says Saddam Hussein could still be disarmed without the use of force. The 15 nations on the Council are now sharply divided, with strong backing for French demands to give the Iraqis more time to cooperate. The report has disappointed both Downing Street and the White House, giving President Bush a stark choice: either defy the UN or go to war alone.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame with conquering limbs astride from land to land. There at those sea-washed sunset gates stands a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is imprisoned lightning, and her name, Liberty, mother of exiles. "Oh, America," cries she with silent lips, "give me the ghosts of the people who you destroyed and whose nation you stole, that I might learn their ancient wisdom and be shown a pathway to solace. Give me the spirits of those who across dark seas you shipped here in shackles, the bondage of history might be destroyed and they reunited with their forefathers. Give me land free of tenure, free of enclosure, land undefiled by cupidity's clasping claws, nor fire scorched by your endless wars, a place where place has not been usurped. Give me a simple home which is not a rich man's castle, which is not a defense against life, but a confirmation of life itself. Give me a roof that will shelter love rather than protect avarice. Give me oceans which are not hunting grounds, continents which are not killing fields. Give me air unpolluted by the smokestacks of unbridled commerce, water untainted by your saccharine duplicity. Give me food which is the fruit of honest labor rather than the curse of abject slavery. Give me a bed which celebrates free-thinking joy rather than callow lasciviousness. Give me love which is not ersatz, which is not prostitution, which is not perverted by your Hollywood heist. Give me your bodies free of vanity, bodies which are not silicone, not the crude patchwork of the surgeon's knife, nor shrouded by the purdah of tawdry fashion. Cast off the obesity of Narcissus that I might once see you naked and proud. Give me a dream, but not your dream, for first you must rewrite it. Oh, America, did you not see at the height of the fire? Liquid assets flowed like sweet honey from your vaults, ran in streams from your marbled emporiums past helpless security guards, disarmed by their confusion, and out onto the gold-paved cinder-caked streets. Tossing aside the theater of sorrow, reptilian shoals of cocaine-driven brokers, Prozac-popping investors, and Valium-blind shareholders rushed forward to consider possible gain through the consolidation of loss. Shipless pirates training their singular eyes upon a singular windfall. Who really cared from whence the storm had blown? While the buried struggled for air, the caves were as yet inhabited only by the goats. Turgid glitterati paced the sidewalks, emptily ogling plastic dummies dressed up to the nines of the fur of animism depleted, exchanging vacuous synthetic smiles, waiting to see who'd laugh last. No one knew which was which, who was what, no one cared. They were all other. Stifling on the fog of deceit that blinded every bit as much as the dust and smoke, yet sensing deep down that somehow they were complicit in the carnage, corpulent corporate tycoons were aided from the clammy leather back seats of overstretched limousines to be led to illicit private bookings. Puffing on cigars as big as their biggest phallic fantasies, they salivated over very special menus, fed their dyspepsia, then belched, rank on usury while speculating on the rise and fall of their pubescent escorts' cleavages and the rock-solid investments that hung between them. Oh yes, diamonds are a girl's best friend, a wife's worst enemy, and the flesh-tearing manacle to the poor wretches forced to scrape them free from the earth. Sated by excess and an obsession with gold whose very liquidity now threatened to smother even their innate ignorance, the tycoons clenched their fat asses and reached out their porky hands toward their torpid escort's powdered flesh, seeking to leach from it the lifeblood that in all their crumpled decadence they had never known. Yet for all the self-delusion of this hedonistic hell, the neon flashed and the billboards brayed through the tragic pall, and the message remained the same. If you're not with us, you're against us. Consumed, and in their self-imposed impotence, the crowds were eager to oblige. The old world of cheesecake security had been unceremoniously binned, but the new world would be gift-wrapped. Gadgets and gewgaws, trinkets and trash, the cluster bombs of consumerism. Money changed hands, but always ended up in the same pockets. Friend or foe, who really cared? You only lived once. That much now seemed conclusive. The essence was simple. This was still the postmodernist capital of capitalism, its very heart and soul. There was no option but to dive deeper into the belly of the beast. Don't think, buy. Don't stop, spend. Prove to yourself that you still exist. Consume or be consumed. Ciao, bambino. Bye-bye. Oh, America. Give me values free of your ticker tape psychosis, free of your jingoistic prattle, free of your terrible mission. Give me justice which is not the searing spite of your revenge. Give me peace which is not the product of war nor dependent upon it. Give me hope where there is only despair, a future which is not your loathsome crusade. Give me freedom where now there is only servitude. Give me face where facelessness has become the norm. Give me music which feeds the soul rather than stealing from it. Give me time which is not measured by the scourge of your deadly dollar. Give me the honesty of considered reason rather than the cheap escape of glib rationalization. Give me those who truly sung your praises, yet whose heritage you now defile. Whitman, Steinbeck, Ginsberg, Pollock and Rothko, Ayler and Coltrane, that they might sing again of a love supreme. Give me your philosophers that we might fly high together above the cuckoo's nest of your insanity. Give me the madmen, the outsiders, the hustlers, and the beats who you so decry. Then give me your own tired, your own poor, your own huddled masses yearning to breathe free. But give me also those from across the planet who you have enslaved with your cheap morality and your military might, and we will wait. Give the homeless tempest-tossed to me, and we will cluster tight together and stand apart from you. For until you heal yourself, I can offer none of these a home.
Last October, Ari Fleischer, the White House spokesperson, said that the $80 billion cost of the war could be saved for the cost of one bullet. Now, if Saddam Hussein were assassinated, the secret police in Iraq would still be the same, the military who dropped chemical weapons on the Kurds would still be the same, the judiciary who implement the repressive laws in Iraq would still be the same. It'd still be the same political system and military system. Donald Rumsfeld said that if the senior leadership in Iraq and their families went into exile, that would be a fair trade for a war. But if the senior leadership in Iraq and their families went into exile, the political system would still be the same, the government ministries which implement all of these policies would still be the same, we'd still have the Ba'ath Party in control in Iraq, it would be the same setup. So I think we should be very careful about adopting the language of regime change. I think that it's much more accurate to describe US intentions towards Iraq as regime stabilization and leadership change, just replacing the supreme leader and his inner circle, and keeping the same system in place. Now, why would they want to do that? Why would they want to carry on with the same system? Well, in July 1991, Thomas Friedman, who was then, as he still is now, diplomatic correspondent in the New York Times, said the economic sanctions on Iraq would continue until there was a military coup in Iraq, and that the US would achieve the best of all worlds, an iron-fisted junta in Iraq without Saddam Hussein. This would hold Iraq together with an iron fist to the liking of Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Turkey has been waging a brutal war of repression against its own Kurds for over 2 decades. They do not want to see the Kurds of northern Iraq enjoying autonomy and freedom and self-confidence in a democratic Iraq. They want to see the Kurds held down. They've got troops in Iraq right now, in northern Iraq, in the Kurdish zone, and they're going to pour more troops, tens of thousands more troops into Iraq very soon. And while the war is going on, they are going to try and crush the Kurdish autonomous zone. Saudi Arabia does not want to see the extension of Iranian influence into southern Iraq, doesn't want to see the Shia majority, because Iraq is 60% Shia Muslim, doesn't want to see the Shia majority in Iraq gaining in confidence and autonomy. They want to see the Shia population held down by the iron fist. So it's in the interest of the United States strategic partners in the region, their clients, to have the same regime carry on. And Saudi Arabia has been reported to have been lobbying Washington and London to keep the same system in place. So when the US announced its plans for military government after the war, they said that the top 3 officials in each government ministry in Baghdad would be replaced by US officers. And the rest of the government, most of the government, the ministries as they are right now, will continue, but just with a thin layer of US officials at the top. And that's pretty much the same thing that happens every 4 years with elections in the United States. The top people in each ministry change. So it's rare, what the United States is really talking about is the kind of political change we see every 4 years in the United States. That led the Iraqi opposition to erupt in outrage and led Kanan Makia, who is the arch critic of the regime in Iraq, who wrote a book called The Republic of Fear, which is, the major denunciation of the regime in Iraq. He denounced US plans towards Iraq, saying that the US was merely trying to reassure repressive regimes in the Gulf and restore the Ba'athist system in a different guise. They say this war is about liberating the people of Iraq, but in fact it's not. It's about maintaining the same system, but with just a different face at the top. They say this war is about disarmament, but they're not interested in disarmament. Whenever Iraq complies with the inspector's demands, it's dismissed as an empty concession. Colin Powell has said the inspections will not work. The United States kicked the inspectors out in December 1998 in order to make way for a 4-day bombing raid. They're trying to roll up the inspections now. Inspections are part of the problem, not part of the solution as far as the United States is concerned, because as long as the inspectors are there and working, that delays war, that gets in the way. They need to be gotten out of the way. If they wanted to have disarmament in Iraq, they'd be following the disarmament program laid down in a British-sponsored UN resolution, Resolution 1284, passed in December 1999. 1284 said that the weapons inspector should recommend to the Security Council the key remaining disarmament tasks to be carried out by Iraq. What is required of Iraq for the completion of each task should be clearly defined and precise, said Resolution 1284. There's no deadlines in 1284, there's no threat of immediate military action. But the US hasn't wanted to define key disarmament tasks in Iraq, because if they explain exactly what Iraq has to do to prove that it's disarmed, then the US will no longer be able to keep moving the goalposts. Now back in November we were told that the key task was to allow inspectors into the presidential palaces, and Iraq was bound to refuse this, and that would give a pretext for war. Or if they did allow inspectors into the palaces, they'd find the weapons and weapons materials, and that would provide a pretext for war. Well, Iraq did allow inspectors into the presidential palaces, they didn't find anything. So then the pretext moved on, the goals moved on. Would Iraq allow U-2 spy planes to fly? That was going to be a big test. Well, they allowed that. Would Iraq destroy the Al-Samud missiles? Well, they are allowing that right now. They're destroying them. So the United States doesn't want to be tied down to a particular set of disarmament goals. That's why they've been refusing to define key disarmament tasks. Plus, if key disarmament tasks are defined, that will mean the start of an inspection and verified disarmament process in Iraq. The US doesn't want to start inspections in Iraq, it wants to finish them, get them out of the way and get on with the war. So they say this war is about disarmament, but they're rolling up and trying to push aside the one way of having verified disarmament in Iraq, which is the inspection system. The inspectors say they are able to do their work. They say there is substantial and active cooperation going on. We haven't reached the end of the road with the inspections, but because of the US military timetable, the US is trying to get rid of them. What the US is trying to do right now is it's trying to wriggle out of commitments that it's made, including the commitment President Bush just made that he was going to force a vote in the Security Council. Probably they're going to wriggle out of that. What they say is that this war is in support of UN resolutions. They say that this war is in support of Resolution 1441 from last November. Well, when you go back and read Resolution 1441, it doesn't authorize military action. Yes, it does say that the Security Council has in the past threatened serious consequences against Iraq, but it's very clear from the resolution that the body which has to decide what the serious consequences are and how they should be carried out and who should carry them out is the Security Council. The US doesn't want to have the Security Council in charge of these things. We saw in December 1998 what they think of the UN and the Security Council. The UN was sitting down to consider an weapons inspector's report. So they were sitting down to discuss the weapons inspector's report and decide what to do about it. They were about an hour into the discussion and news came in that the US and UK had started bombing. The timing of that bombing raid, Operation Desert Fox, was a deliberate slap in the face at the UN Security Council. It was an act of contempt towards the UN, and we're seeing the same kind of contempt right now. The US says, if you obey what we say, you are relevant. If you don't obey us, you're irrelevant and get out of the way. This was summed up by Madeleine Albright, the Secretary of State under the Clinton administration, when she said we will act unilaterally, well, we'll act multilaterally when we can, and unilaterally when we must, i.e., international law when it's useful, forget it when it's not useful, when we want to do something and international law gets in the way. That is the doctrine of a rogue state. A violent state committed to its own ends regardless of international legality. And I'll just finish off by saying, reminding you that the United States is the only country in the world which has been found guilty of international terrorism by the World Court. The international, the World Court was asked to adjudicate on the US paramilitary attacks on Nicaragua under the Sandinistas and found the United States guilty of the unlawful use of force across international borders. Now when you translate that from legal language, that means that they were guilty of international terrorism against Nicaragua. The World Court required the US to pay a substantial sum in compensation to Nicaragua. The United States has never paid a cent of that. International institutions have not been able to restrain US power. The only thing that can restrain US and British power right now is not the UN, it's not the World Court, it's not international bodies, but it's the pressure and force of the people of Britain and the United States. The war was supposed to happen last autumn, didn't happen. The war was supposed to happen in January, it didn't happen. The war was supposed to happen in February, it didn't happen. The war was supposed to happen at the beginning of this month, it didn't happen. That wasn't because of magic, that wasn't because of bad weather. That was because of people like you putting pressure on governments and forcing them to do things that they didn't want to do, getting tangled up in this mess in the UN. Why is the Security Council so divided? Why are these small countries defying the will of the United States? Well, one of the main reasons is because back home, their populations are so overwhelmingly opposed to this war. We and they in those countries have delayed this war. There are millions of people in Iraq right now who are living in their own homes, who are not refugees. There are hundreds of thousands of people who are not hungry and starving because the humanitarian aid system is still going on. There are tens of thousands of people today who are still alive because of the pressure that we have put on. the pressure that we exert has consequences, has impacts on decision makers. What we do now, even if war comes, can affect the way this war is fought, can help to save lives, and can help to make decision makers think again as they contemplate future wars in their so-called war on terrorism. You have made a difference, you can make more of a difference. Thank you. Okay, and now I think it's good.
Revolution. Government is the problem.
21st century revolution.
Government is the problem.
here, they look like the police outside, but actually they're very, very different. And they too are secretive and unaccountable and not in the least like. And also I have to say they are paid for and under the operation control of the Americans, which actually changes things very much. The Military Defense Police Agency have given away their authority to the visiting force. Would you like to say something? Just to the agency, but actually, let's move on. This is a wonderful part of Lilydale. It's in an area of outstanding natural beauty, and in about 1992, I think it was, we worked hard to try and get Menwith Hill included in this wonderful area. They actually had to get consultants in to produce glossy documents to say that this is an area of outstanding natural beauty. But in fact, Menwith Hill was cut out of that area. And so you've got a circle with a sort of dog tooth out of it, where Menwith Hill is. There are 29 radars at the moment. These golf balls, inside the golf balls is a satellite dish. I'm afraid I can't say too much. I'm not going to say too much about the technology of it. Unfortunately, we were going to have somebody who would do that, but unfortunately they couldn't come. But there's quite a lot on websites about that. The role of Menwith Hill is several roles: military, part of the echelon system, whereby they can tap into any airborne communications. It is absolutely essential in the attack on Iraq. I mean, I find this terribly difficult because while we're standing here in this beautiful sunshine, actually, Baghdad is being bombed out of existence. I think we really do have to remember that as we walk around with the balloons. There is actually another radome being built on the other side. And the other part of Menwith Hill, role of Menwith Hill, is Star Wars. And that's the reason why we're here too. Because Menwith Hill is absolutely crucial in the Star Wars system, American missile defense. There's some very good websites, incidentally, which will tell you exactly what Star Wars is about. Star Wars has a very complicated system, and Menwith Hill and Fylingdales are the two bases in this country. Possibly the Deep Space Tracking Facility and Near Space Centre. Thank you. At Feltwell, if anybody knows about Feltwell, we do have quite a lot of information in CAB, so if anybody wants to use this as was designated the European Ground Relay Station for the space-based system, space-based infrared system, crucial part of Star Wars. So we've got a lot of work to do. Our long-term end in CAB, long-term work, is to actually send the visiting forces back to within their borders. The fact that Menwith Hill is here, and also all the other American bases in this country, absolutely puts our security at risk. If you look at the security here, mind you, they can never secure this place, and that's what is worrying about it. Because it does actually put all our security at risk, no matter how much security they put in. It is very easy to get in, I know that.
Oh no!
Do anything up.
I'm not quite here.
and gentlemen, the President.
Unlikely, a very stupid thing if the police do anything.
Absolutely.
I know I am.
Why have regulation like t-shirts like that? Not, because it makes it look more valuable.
In simple terms, one of our planes attacked the wrong target because the bombing instructions were based on an outdated map.
We like war because we're good at it.
Came over one day. Get over it. Get over it. Stand up here. I'll go, folks. Down. I'll go move back away from the fence, mate, so we can get more people over. That'll be grand.
Stop it! Shame on you!
Stop pushing!
Stop pushing!
Stop shoving!
Stop your shoving! Stop your shoving! Stop your shoving!
Stop your shoving!
Stop shoving, you bullies! Stop your shoving! Stop your shoving! Stop pushing! You bullies!
That the walls had ears, and now it seems that the walls have balls with which they monitor all our calls. From the land of the free and the shopping mall come men with hills and men with balls. I Up in Yorkshire, there's trouble at Mill since General Custer's on Menwith Hill. This is not a mountainous molehill, this is a fully functioning dunghill. Now some may fear the lion's den and some may wish to apply some zen. Others they use paper and a pen. Some they pray and say amen. But men with guns or men with gall, or men who pray for cannonballs, or men of Parliament who do fuck all are the reason why we're here at all. So to the sisters everywhere, help us end this nightmare. Put an end to all warfare. It's time we built some ploughshares. And little brothers, one and all, get your conscience out of mothballs. Grab your club, cause duty calls. It's time we teed off those golf balls. George Bush.
Take it over when you like. We can always come up with reinforcements. No one wants war anywhere. Not unless they're insane. People who are insane. You know it makes sense, man. Rally around the Coca-Cola. Take the Coca-Cola. Protect the Coca-Cola, man. You got to protect the Coca-Cola. Worldwide, no. You got to protect the Coca-Cola.
Since the Second World War, the Americans have pursued a double-edged strategy. On the one hand, they have attempted to make the world safe for capitalism. This was, in a sense, the strategy of the Cold War, to maintain the world for Western-type market capitalism. But at the second strand of that strategy in the Cold War period was to ensure that Washington's preeminence and dominance within that context, within that paradigm. So long as the Cold War continued, so long as there was this serious military threat from the Russians up until the end of the beginning of the 1990s. So long as the Cold War continued, there's a genuine convergence of those two interests. Nobody beyond the Americans are capable of taking on the Russians militarily, so the West and the Western nations, Europe, Japan, the big capitalist countries and whatnot, find it in their interest to become subordinate to the Americans, really, over that 40 to 50 year period. What has happened over the last 10, 12 years since the collapse of the Soviet Union, the collapse of the Eastern Bloc countries, is essentially on the one hand there is the victory of the Western style model, the victory of the West in the Cold War, but the other side of the context though is the fact that there is no longer a visible threat, you know, and for all the talk of Iraq being a threat, nobody in the State Department and nobody within, you know, the higher echelons of the EU and whatever seriously consider the Iraqis to have been a threat to anybody. You know, they had trouble fighting the Iranians in a war for 10 years. The idea that they are a threat to the West is just nonsense, basically. Right? Nobody considers them to be a threat as such. So there is no threat, and that allows for a divergence of these two strands of American strategy over the last 10, 12 years. Basically, the strand of maintaining the system for the free market, which the British, the Germans, the Japanese, whoever, all agree with, and the strand of maintaining Washington's dominance within that paradigm begin to diverge. And what we've got over the last 10 years is a series of policy documents from the Americans whereby they have said we have got to be very clear, very straightforward in our attempt to reimpose our authority on the world. To give you a threat, this is from Rebuilding American Defences. This is from the Project for the New American Century. I don't know if you've heard of these people. These are the neoconservatives who, from the middle of the 1990s, have been talking about the need to attack Iraq, the need to smash Saddam, to finish the job that George Bush Sr. Started 12 years ago to go in, and these are the people who basically surround George W. at the moment, people like Roosevelt and Cheney and whatever else. Now let's look at what they talk about here. At present, the United States faces no global rival. America's grand strategy should aim to preserve and extend this advantaged position as far into the future as possible. There are, however, potentially powerful states dissatisfied with the current situation and eager to change it. The American peace reaches across the globe. The forces that preserve the peace is increasingly overwhelmed by its tasks, i.e. the American military, is increasingly overwhelmed by its task of maintaining the American peace and maintaining the American hegemony. America's global leadership and its role as the guarantor of the current great power peace relies upon the safety of the American homeland, the preservation of a favourable balance of power in Europe, the Middle East and the surrounding energy producing regions. Come on, we've got to be honest about this. This is a war for oil. And they're really honest about it. You know, the fact that we don't have these things reproduced day in, day out inside the British is a disgrace, really. The surrounding energy producing regions and East Asia, the general stability of the international system of nation states relative to terrorism, organised crime and other non-state actors. They're very clear. There needs to be, they say, a massive expansion in American military spending in order to impose American power, and crucially, you know, this is a global strategy of imposing American power across the world, but at the same time, crucially in the Middle East is the issue of oil. I mean, I've got in front of me, I won't bore you with the couple of hundred pages of it, the National Energy Policy, which was developed by, you know, I mean, we're not talking about a bunch of nobodies who are developing the National Energy Policy. Dick Cheney's on the panel here, Colin Powell, Paul O'Neill, Secretary for the Treasury, Gail Norton, Secretary of the Interior, blah, blah, blah. Big names. National Energy Strategy of the American, that was published in 2001. What does that say? It's very straightforward. We increasingly need more oil. Right? The American system runs on oil, we need more and more oil. We cannot guarantee that oil through market mechanisms. We need military means to ensure our guarantee of that oil. Our present suppliers of oil cannot be guaranteed as well. If you look at the two top suppliers of oil to the Americans over the last decade, number one is Saudi Arabia. Everybody who knows anything about Al-Qaeda knows that they come from Saudi Arabia in the main. Knows that there is a massive level of anger and hatred aimed against the Americans because of the stationing of American troops in the land of the two holy places, you know, in Saudi Arabia. There's a massive level of anger that's fed into the growth of Al-Qaeda. But at the same time, the second power, the second biggest supplier of oil to the Americans, you probably won't know, is Venezuela. And in Venezuela over the last year, there has been essentially a massive movement to the left. The Chavez's government, which the Americans tried to, you know, were behind an attempt at coup to get rid of, because essentially a left reformist, you know, an attempted kind of reformist sort of government, socialistic government in Venezuela. There is a threat in those terms of Islamicism in the Middle East and a threat of kind of, if you like, socialism in the Americas. Threat to to American oil, and America runs on oil. Without oil, the country would collapse. Now, in that context, they understand what Professor Michael Clare talks. The Americans have got a policy of global oil acquisition. They have to be in control of the oil. So there is a broader context if America wants to be the top dog in the world, and within that there is the crucial issue of controlling oil and controlling the oil from the Middle East. And being able to say, if there is an Islamist uprising in somewhere like Saudi Arabia, that they are in control of the country with the second largest oil reserves in the region, Iraq, and can use Iraq, you know, talking nonsense of axis of evil and whatever else, as a staging post to control the oil of Kuwait, to control the oil of Iran. They are very clear about this. We should be very clear about this as well. Now, what, in terms of a transformation in the nature of the American strategy, right? Over, you know, there's a deal of myth talked about the difference between the Clinton administration, liberal, blah blah blah, administration, and the Bush administration. We've got to be very clear in there are differences, but the differences pale into insignificance in comparison to the similarities. When Madeleine Albright said, you know, 500,000 Iraqi kids is a price worth paying in 1996, we know that these people were murdering bastards. And when Bill Clinton, you know, hide away from, you know, getting a blowjob from somebody blows up the fucking medicine factory in Sudan, you know, we know these people are murdering bastards. We also know Madeleine Albright, when she was the US ambassador to the UN, said quite clearly, we will use multilateral mechanisms when we feel that we can, and we will use unilateral means when we feel that we must. What has transformed over the last 18 months in America, what 9/11 has allowed the Americans to do, is really to go on the offensive, and in particular to mobilise public opinion in the States for warfare. In the first case in Afghanistan, and secondly in Iraq. You know, to push forward this belief that there can be war. Now, the Americans, as everybody knows, who knows anything about it, are terrified of body bags coming home after Vietnam and all the rest of it. So the mobilisation of public opinion isn't simply the only element of the strategy. The second element is this, that I talked about briefly before, is this revolutionary military affairs. This belief that the Americans have, that they have got now these new technologies, they can fly in high, you know, smart bombs and whatever else, take out Saddam, whoever, you know, with relatively few casualties. And we can see, you know, they have had relatively few casualties thus far in the first 3 weeks of this war, to be able to take out a country. Now, let's have a look at, you know, when people talk about, you know, the arguments for and against war in Iraq, one of the things that they talk about is, well, look what's happened in Afghanistan. You know, relatively few casualties. We took out the Afghan government. And on the basis of taking out the Afghan government, we've now got this Karzai, you know, democracy stretching the thing over there, but you know, we've now got this, you know, better, you know, government, you know, than the Taliban, than we had in the Taliban years in Afghanistan. But if we actually look at the reality of the Afghan situation, you know, stuff that I've read on this situation basically suggests that in December 2001. The Americans realised that if they seriously wanted to have a firefight to go into Kabul, there would be a bloodbath. Right? And what happened, and the Taliban knew it, everybody knew it, there would be a bloodbath, and basically a de facto agreement was made whereby the leadership was shifted into Pakistan, the rank and file of the Taliban was shifted into the southern regions of Afghanistan, and Karzai was set up as in control of Kabul. And essentially what you've got in Kabul is, you know, Karzai, supposedly the leader of the country, is in fact the mayor of daytime Kabul. He's not even the mayor of nighttime Kabul, you know. And in terms of his support, he is surrounded constantly by US special forces to defend himself. There are no Afghanis who can be trusted to support Karzai at any point. And in Afghanistan, it's widely believed that Karzai is a career CIA person. The idea just because he's Afghani doesn't make him, in any sense, a representative of the Afghani regime. So while there has been this myth of a quick triumph and a shift towards, Western style, blah blah blah, there's going to be democracy in elections in 2004 in Afghanistan, large deal of myth there. The reality is an incredibly fragmented political system. What we've got in Iraq is a similar sort of situation. People talked about, reading again, a lot of the literature on this issue, talked about the Iraqi generals over the last 10 years are not stupid. They know the Americans have been coming at one point or another. They've been reading the Vietnamese. They've been reading what General Giap wrote in 1961 before the Vietnam War, with the Americans at least kicked off, where he basically argued you don't take on the enemy where they are strong. We aren't stupid enough to line our tanks up in the stand and allow the tank busters to come in and fry us all. We take on the enemy where they are weak. Right? So there's this element to us learning from, and we don't really know what's going to go on at a military level in Iraq at that level, but we can see at least elements of that sort of strategy coming through. Again, we saw in the FT a couple of a week ago Friday, in the FT was talking about in America this real fear of the ghost of the Tet Offensive. In Vietnam in 1968, an uprising in 38 towns across southern Vietnam by Vietnamese, really militarily defeated by the Americans, but politically and psychologically showed that the Americans were not going to liberate. Right? Now we've not had that, there's no direct parallel with that by any stretch of the imagination, but we have seen there's no real love of the Americans. There's nobody, this is not, Baghdad today is not Paris 1944. There are not going to be, in 9 months' time, lots of little American babies popping out. Because thousands of people have been shagging the American liberators as they were in Paris in 1944. Nobody is particularly keen on the Americans and the British in Baghdad and Basra. They might not like Saddam, but not stupid enough to like the British and the Americans, because they understand that the key issue for them is oil. Right? And for all the talk about instituting democracy in Iraq, they simply cannot do it, because if you institute democracy in Iraq, you allow the people of Iraq to control their own oil. Now, what is the point of this conflict if you then allow these people to control their own oil, firstly? Secondly, if you allow democracy in Iraq, they will give national rights to the Kurds. If you allow national rights to the Kurds, that de facto destabilises the region. Kurds are a massive minority in Turkey, a massive minority in Iran, as well as being minorities in Azerbaijan and other places. Right? It will completely destabilise the region. The reason why Bush Sr. didn't go for a kill in 91 is precisely because he didn't want to destabilise the region. So they don't want to do that. They can't allow a democratic government to give those two basic democratic rights in Iraq. So that can't be allowed. So the long-term prospects in Iraq cannot be that this country is run in their own interest without there being some kind of struggle against the British and Americans for imposing their interest in, they can give some kind of formal democracy potentially, where there is no, there's no real substance democracy. They're not allowed to bloody vote on control of the oil. It's all been privatised. BP and whoever are back in control of these countries. Various American oil companies and British oil companies are in control. They can allow that at a nominal level, a level of democracy, but they can't allow this real democracy, which will destabilise NATO, a key institution through which America organises its hegemony in the world, and democracy over the question of oil. So another parallel, perhaps, in terms of America and American policy, what they were talking about in the FT again last week, is the parallel with the Israeli invasion of Lebanon at Beirut in 1982 to drive out and smash the PLO in 1982. An interesting article I read last week basically looks at militarily the Israelis smashed the PLO, smashed the Lebanese in 1982. There's no two ways about it. This is the time when Ariel Sharon won his Spurs as a war criminal. These people were a horrendous strategy in 1982. What has been the consequence? What was the consequences of the invasion of Lebanon? The consequence was the creation of Hezbollah. And over the next 18 years, by the year 2000, the first defeat of the Israelis at the hand of Arabs by the Hezbollah, and the forcing out of the Israelis out of southern Lebanon 3 years ago. So what we're seeing Yeah? What we are seeing is that I suspect that will be the strategy. I suspect that there will be, you know, this Jay Garner, the Zionist, who's going to be put in charge of the ex-American general Zionist, who's going to be put in charge of Iraq, cannot rule in the interests of the Iraqis. There will be struggles on the street. There will be fighting. There will be, you know, potentially the creation of another Hezbollah. We can't guarantee exactly what will happen, but I suspect that that is a scenario that may work itself out. What it can say for us, in terms of generally in the global level, and this is where I'll finish, is that the quick victory in Afghanistan, the quick victory in Iraq, will confirm to the Americans that their power to do these things. It will mean more wars. There will be more wars where they will go and impose their authority here, there and everywhere. So there will be more need for an anti-war movement to continue to stop this struggle and to stop the kind of barbarity that we see on the front page of today's Daily Mirror, that kid whose arms have been blown up. Yeah? This is the reality of the global order. That will continue. Right? So it means that there will be continued need for war and there will be continued need for an anti-war movement. And all we can say about this is that we have built over the last year and a half in Britain and globally the biggest global anti-war movement in world history. Something that we can be proud of, that we said this bloody slaughter was not in our name. Right? But we've got to go beyond that to be able to take that anti-war movement forward, and that's what Mark's going to talk about now, to take that anti-war movement forward to really attempt to stop the next bloody slaughter.
I am not he, nor master, nor lord, no crown to wear, no cross to bear in stations. I am not he, nor shall be, warlord of nations. These heroes have run before me, now dead upon the flesh pile crown or cross in stone upon these graves. Promise of the ribbon was all it took, where only the strap would leave its mark upon these slaves. What flag to thrust into this flesh? Rag, bandage, mop in their flowing death. Taken aside, they were pointed away for God, Queen and country. Now in silence they lie. They ran beside these masters, children of sorrow. As slaves to that trilogy, they had no future. They believed in democracy, freedom of speech. Yet dead on the flesh piles, I hear no breath. I hear no hope, no whisper of faith from those that have died for some other's privilege. Out from your palaces, princes and queens. Out from your churches, you clergy, you Christs. I'll neither live nor die for your dreams. I'll make no subscription to your paradise. 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 I'll make no subscription to your paradise.
Dominate, intimidate, or attack. Dominate, intimidate, or attack. Dominate, intimidate, or attack.